Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ravens Call. I'm your host, Tyler Cameron, as always. Now, this is week 3, so if you haven't or don't know what this podcast consists of, we're going to talk football. We're going to talk about game recaps from the week, looking forward into next week, and in-game analysis of the Ravens game of the week. 2 weeks ago, I posted that week 1 video, so you can go check that out and follow along. This podcast will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. You can find all the links to those on each of the channels, on each platform, or you can go to my Instagram and look up the Ravens Call podcast. On that note, hope everyone is having a great day and ready to listen to some exciting NFL and Baltimore Ravens news. All right, so very interesting week of football in week 3. A lot of teams making a name for themselves. A lot of questions to be answered for some teams. A lot of questions being answered with some teams, if you catch my drift. Now, we're going to start off like we always do. Same kind of concept. We're going to go through all the games by each time they were playing. We're going to go through the Thursday night games and the morning games and the late games and talk about all of those. Then later on, we're going to talk about the Ravens, go over their game, see what can be better for next week, what we did well, go through that. And then we're going to go through week 4 predictions and see what to look forward to in the coming weeks for the Ravens as well as in the NFL. So on that note, let's get started. So the first game on the docket was that Thursday night game with the Patriots and the Jets. Jets came out playing well. They played consistently. They didn't put up as much points as I thought they were after that first drive, but they were able to manage with scoring. They were able to score a touchdown in each of the quarters and then a field goal in the end. The Patriots just could not get anything done. They couldn't move the ball on offense. They couldn't really stop anything the Jets were doing. They just didn't look like themselves, the Patriots. They've been playing well. They took the Seahawks to overtime in week 2. In week 1, they beat the Bengals. So that's got to hold some merit. And then they come in and just get beaten up by the Jets. But it's really no surprise that the Jets are starting to click. Aaron Rodgers has 3 games under his belt now, and he's starting to click with receivers, with his running backs, and their defense is starting to figure stuff out. So very exciting to see what goes on from there for the Jets. Now, for the Sunday morning games. This first one was a big upset. Good for the Ravens fans here. The Giants beating the Browns 21-15. Now the Giants came out strong. 21 points in the first half. Browns had a good opening drive touchdown to Amari Cooper, and that was it. They stayed stagnant all the way up till the end of the game where they scored a touchdown and then got the 2-point conversion to make it interesting, but it wasn't enough for them to pull out the win. Malik Nabers for the Giants. He's looking at offensive rookie of the year. Guy's been amazing. Definitely is a future star if he continues. The only problem is he's playing for the Giants. And that's going to be tough because, he makes Daniel Jones look really well, even though Malik Nabers is just balling out and kind of taking over the offense himself. But not shocking there. Just as a Ravens fan, it's nice to see the Browns losing and Deshaun Watson playing like shit. So it's always good to see. Now on to our next game with the Packers versus the Titans. Malik Willis, he was once a former Titans quarterback. He was then traded this year to the Packers to back up Jordan Love. Well, Jordan Love is injured for this week as well. He may play next week. So Malik Willis got to play his former team, and boy, did he do well. He balled out. He had a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown. He was all over the place. Packers won 30-14. There was a pick 6 from Will Levis, of course. to Jair Alexander, which, it was a telegraphed pick. Titans they looked good offensively. They've been looking good. They just make these dumb plays, and then towards the end, they just kind of fall off. So it was very crazy, but the Packers look really good. Josh Jacobs, the offense is clicking to the point to where Jordan Love comes back. He's got a team that's 2-1. Better than what they anticipated, because start the season off 0-1. You just lose your franchise quarterback. You come in with a backup, and he's won you the last 2 games. So very good on the Packers. I applaud them, and hopefully we'll get to see Jordan Love here in the next week or two. Now, here comes the next game, which this one was kind of a bore fest, in my opinion. The Colts versus the Bears. And the Bears look okay, but Caleb Williams is not playing up to what the other rookies were playing up to this week. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But the Colts won 21-16. Jonathan Taylor had another impressive outing, as per usual. The Bears started to click towards the end of the game, but it was a slow first half for both teams, and then they started picking it up in that second half. But the Colts were able to squeak out a win. Definitely, Anthony Richardson has a lot to work on as a QB, because he's just not looked his best in the past 3 games. Jonathan Taylor, they're finally giving him the rock a little more, to where you're starting to see that productivity that he's had the past couple seasons. So very nice outing for the Colts. Nice for them to get their first win. But definitely watching out for Caleb Williams, because these other rookies are starting to ball out. Now, our next game is a huge upset, and it really shows that this may be the year that Sam Darnold comes back and takes the Vikings someplace they've never been, which is a winning record and maybe a playoff spot. Now, I know they've had their spots and stuff like that, but it always just seems like, well, they can't really beat the good teams, and they always fall short. That normally they're a first round exit from the playoffs. Well, maybe not this year. They came in playing at home against the Texans. Everyone's expecting the Texans to win, and this defense demolished the Strouds. That is a Tom DeGrassi word for the Texans. He calls them the Strouds. Give credit where credit is due. So if I ever announce the Texans as the Strouds, it's from Tom DeGrassi. He coined that phrase. So back to the game. Final score, 34-7 was the score for the Vikings. They scored well in the first half, and in the second half, they were able to put up points at will. Texans were able to score a touchdown in the third, but other than that, the defense looked amazing. Picked off Stroud twice. Were just able to hold everything in check, and it was crazy to see that the Vikings are 3-0. They are the best 3-0 team, in my opinion, over the past 3 weeks. There's a couple 3-0 teams that we'll talk about a little later that they don't really strike me as a team that, teams that really deserve the 3-0 rating. They've played good teams, but a lot of them they have been average. The Vikings have come out to play this season, so watch out for when you play the Vikings. On to our next game. This was the game of the week in the early window, which was the Eagles and Saints. Both were top teams. The Eagles just lost a heartbreaking loss against the Falcons, and the Saints started out 2-0, beating the Cowboys by a lot. So we figured at home, the Saints, it's going to be a powerhouse. It's going to be a lot of points game. You would have been horribly mistaken. The score at halftime was 3-0. The game didn't even get interesting until the fourth quarter. A lot of mix and match type of plays. Just nothing could get going until that fourth quarter, where Saints were leading and the Eagles were able to come back and win. So it was kind of a reverse fate for them. They lose on a last drive last week to the Falcons, and now they're able to pull off one of their own. So the score was 15-12, a very weird score. Very weird score. But Saquon Barkley played really well. Jalen Hurts, not so much. Dallas Goedert, 10 receptions, 170 yards. It was his best performance by far. Saquon's doing Saquon type things. So definitely Saquon Barkley is showing up to be a huge ad for the Eagles, and the Giants are really kicking themselves right now. But very interesting game. Saints, they look good, but not good enough to beat the Eagles. Our next game is the Chargers and Steelers. Steelers win 20-10. Woohoo. That you play another average team. Yes, the Chargers are 2-0, but they played the Raiders and they played Carolina. I think most teams would be 2-0, except the Ravens, obviously. But the score at halftime was 10-7. Chargers were playing well until Herbert gets injured. And then, obviously, the Steelers win the game. So you're catching my point of Steelers can't win unless they play easy teams or they're playing backups, honestly. Because the Steelers' 3-0 record has been against a Falcons team that has not played together. It's week 1, so Kirk Cousins doesn't know what the heck he's doing. Bo Nix doesn't know what he's doing yet because he's only had 2 games, and he's playing the toughest defense around. And then the Chargers were winning. They could have probably won this game if Justin Herbert didn't go down. Steelers' 3-0 record, to me, doesn't mean shit. They're an average team with the best defense in the league and the worst offense in the league. And it sucks that that's how it has to be, but we'll see. Once they play the division, we'll see how well they hold up, and then may change my opinion, or may make my opinion valid. We shall see. But Steelers win 20-10. Nothing special happened in this game. The next game was a huge upset, which was the Broncos and Bucks. Now, going into this game, I thought Tampa Bay was going to win. But I felt Bo Nix was going to have figured it out a little bit. He's just faced the Seahawks and the Steelers, which have 2 of the top defenses in the league. Now he's going to be facing somewhat of a depleted defense, but not as good as the other 2, to where he'll start being able to figure out stuff with his receivers, play calls, seeing defenses. And he did. He played absolutely amazing. Came out and just were kicking them. And so Broncos first half put up 20 points, more than they have in the past 2 games, I feel like. And Bucks could not do anything. This Broncos defense is another underrated defense that's going to do really well. But Broncos came out. Bo Nix looked incredible, running the ball, passing the ball. Still has yet to throw a passing touchdown, but he played really well. And, the second half was not as entertaining. Broncos had 2 field goals, but the Broncos won 26-7. They held the Bucks to 7 points. 1 touchdown in the second quarter, and that was it. That's amazing for the defense, and that's amazing for Bo Nix's confidence, because the Bucks were coming in 2-0. They looked like a pretty good team. They won week 1. They beat Detroit in week 2, and then now they're coming into the Broncos with momentum. And the Broncos just shut that down. So the Broncos get their first win of the season. Definitely something to look forward to in the coming weeks to see Bo Nix's progression. On to our next game, which was the Panthers and the Raiders. Now, obviously, you know what you're expecting. You're expecting the Raiders to come in easy money game. Well, the only difference was the Panthers put in Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's a good veteran quarterback. He looks like me. He keeps the same hairstyle as me all the time, so I really think he's trying to copy me. If you didn't know, I'm a ginger, so I look exactly like Andy Dalton. Just I created the haircuts before he did. I'm sticking to that story, and I will stand by that story. But the Panthers came out playing really well. they were able to put up points at will. They actually put up points every quarter. They were the highest scoring offense this week. And so Andy Dalton played really well, like always. Adam Thielen had a great performance. The Raiders just couldn't do anything on offense, couldn't hold them up on defense. The score was 36-22. It was over in the third quarter. The Raiders scored 15 points in the fourth quarter, but it was over way before that. So good win on the Panthers. Bryce Young is benched for now. I think it's just more of a learning experience that he needs to learn, but he will do really well. Our next game, so we're going to hit into the afternoon games here, was the Dolphins and the Seahawks. Now, Dolphins had Skylar Thompson. They don't have Tua, so I kind of figured that this game was going to go to the Seahawks, and it did in a very hard way for the Dolphins. The Dolphins scored 3 points in the first quarter and then didn't do anything after that. Skylar Thompson got injured, so they had a third-string quarterback come in, and it was abysmal. It was a terrible game for the Dolphins offensively and defensively in the start of the first quarter. They started to control it in the second half, but it was over by then. Seahawks scored 17 points in the first quarter, 7 points in fourth quarter to win 24-3. DK Metcalf had a good game. Geno Smith had a decent game. It was pretty slow game. It started hot in the first quarter and then kind of simmered down. There was no way that the Seahawks were losing this game. So the Seahawks are 3-0. Again, they're a good team, but you've faced the Broncos week 1, who Bo Nix, it's first game, so he's going to play a little jittery. You go against the Patriots, who you barely beat in overtime, and then you go against a Dolphins team that doesn't have Tua. So 3-0, same as the Steelers. You're just there. The good news is that you have a 2-game lead on everyone in your division, Seahawks. So hold it up while you can, win the games where you can. That's what you have to do. You have to win the games to where if you want to lose a couple games in your division, it's okay because you have room for that. We're going to skip the Ravens-Cowboys game and go straight into the 49ers-Rams game. Another great game. I really thought that the 49ers were going to pull this out, but the Rams squeaked by on a fourth quarter rally and ended with a field goal. They won 27-24. The 49ers are 1-2, which I never thought that the Ravens would be in that same position, let alone the 49ers be in that same position. But the 49ers looked really good, up 14-7 at half, then score a touchdown in the third quarter. Thought, okay, they're going to be able to manage the game really well. Nope. Matthew Stafford had other plans. He played really well, balled out, and they were able to stop the 49ers and then get some good drives going to where they were able to score 13 points in the fourth quarter and win the game on a late field goal. So congrats to the Rams. With Cooper Kupp out and Puka Nacua, it's very tough for them to really have that good offensive performance, but Matthew Stafford can pull it off. So congrats to the Rams. 49ers have a lot of work to do. Next game, another great game, was the Lions and Cardinals. Now, the Lions and Cardinals was another fantastic game. Came down to the wire. Lions won 20-13. Everyone pretty much scored all their points in the first half. So first half was 20-10 Lions, and the Cardinals had a field goal in the end. So the second half, again, it just wasn't the best game second half for both teams, but it was within a couple possessions. They just couldn't get anything going in the second half, both teams, and the Lions were able to bounce back from their loss against Tampa Bay. Cardinals, they look like a great team. Yeah, the record shows they're 1-2, but they look like a great team offensively. Defensively, they're up there. So It's going to be a very interesting division that they're in, and very interesting every time any team plays the Cardinals. Our Sunday night game was the Chiefs and the Falcons. Obviously, if you've seen anything about Sunday, it is the call at the end of the game, which we'll get into. But the Chiefs won 22-17. The Falcons played really well. They just kind of slowed up in that second half. They were down at the end of the game, had a chance to score a touchdown to win the game, and they weren't able to because of a no call. Not a call, a no call on Pitts for PI. It was easily a pass interference call, but they did not call it, which normally Kansas City's good for getting the calls. Well, in this way, they did get the call by getting a no call. It was clearly a pass interference call. They clearly missed it. And if Pitts would have been able to score there, I think that the Falcons would have won the game. But again, this is kind of what happens. The Chiefs are 3-0, but they are not a 3-0 type team. Travis Kelce's non-existent. Patrick Mahomes had his 4th pick in 3 weeks. So, and right there, I just want everyone to know he is not MVP. He's not playing like an MVP. I don't want to see that he's getting MVP ladders. Supposedly he was like first or second in week 2 after that for the MVP. He's not even in the top 5, maybe top 10 for the MVP. That's his 4th pick in 3 weeks. And he has a terrible QBR rating. So, no, he's not worth anything for MVP. The Chiefs are just, they barely beat the Ravens by a toe. They got a call at the end of the Bengals game. They did get another call by getting a no call against the Falcons here. They have squeaked by wins because they do have an unfair advantage with the refs. And I know, well, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. They're a good team. They can put up points. They can play good defense. But when it comes down to when the games are close, it somehow always seems to see that there's an advantage towards the Chiefs. The Ravens had 11 penalties against the Chiefs. Bengals had double-digit penalties against them. Let's look at the Chiefs and Falcons. Okay, yeah. This was the most even of penalties, which was 6 penalties, which was good. That's a better start. Granted, the Chiefs aren't at home. If the Chiefs were at home, that would be a little different. But the Chiefs, as a 3-0 team, I don't believe that they are worthy of that 3-0. Now, I digress on that. We'll see how the Chiefs do for the rest of the season. But going into Monday, this next game and this next team, I also think is the best 3-0 team as well, tied with the Vikings, which is the Bills. The Bills have played really well, and last night they demolished the Jaguars. The Jaguars look terrible. They're 0-3. They're pretty much done because they can't get anything straight. The Bills have looked phenomenal. Josh Allen looks like the MVP of this league. Josh Allen looks like the MVP of this league. Not Mahomes, Josh Allen. He had a great performance. They won 47-10. 47-10, which is amazing. Not much to go in that game. They just kept demolishing them. They were up 34-3 at halftime. And then they kind of just let the backups go in. And then the other Monday night game, because there was 2, was the Commanders and the Bengals. Now, this one was a crazy game. There were no turnovers and no punts, which was crazy to say that the Commanders actually pulled this game out. They won 38-33, which is to me is utterly shocking. As a Ravens fan, we got 3 good wins this week. And 2 of them were the Browns losing and the Bengals losing to go to 0-3. But the Commanders looked really well. Jaden Daniels threw his first touchdown, and he actually threw another one, so he had 2 touchdowns in that game. Jaden Daniels looked amazing, running the ball, throwing the ball. The Bengals, they looked okay. Like, they just were always out of it. Their defense looked terrible. They couldn't get any pressure on Jaden Daniels. They couldn't get anything going. Offensively, they were able to get some points up there, but they just couldn't stop the Commanders. And so, it came down to the end, and Jaden Daniels made some amazing plays, and the Bengals just fell short. So the Bengals are now 0-3, which is probably the most shocking team to be 0-3. And they're going into next week. I believe they play Carolina, so they should probably get their first win. If they don't, something's wrong with the world. But, Joe Burrow and the Bengals have a lot to worry about. But, another great week of football. Very exciting to see how it goes and continues into week 4. But before we do that, before we get into our predictions, we're now going on to the team that you all want to hear and are here for, which is the Baltimore Ravens. All right. So, Baltimore Ravens got our first win this week, 28-25. It shows it's a lot closer. It was not that close, but this is what happens with the Ravens. In the fourth quarter, we cannot hold a lead. We did not score in the fourth quarter. The Cowboys scored 19 points. I mean, the score going into the fourth quarter was 28-6. We had this game in the bag, and then we give them 19 points. We have to play better, but also, too, there is a huge discrepancy in penalties. That there were a lot of calls where I'm like, that's not a penalty. And you can see, if you watch the game, Lamar Jackson's getting very frustrated with the calls. There was a play that it makes no sense if you know the rules. And what the play I'm talking about is Dak Prescott was in the end zone. He went and was about to get sacked, and then he threw the ball to an offensive player forward. So it's an incomplete pass. There's no one in the vicinity, and the offensive lineman caught it. He is not eligible. That is not an eligible receiver. You can't do that. And so it should have been intentional grounding and a safety, because he did get it to the line, but he was still in the tackle box. There was no player in the vicinity. So that's a safety, and we get the ball again. Versus it was an incomplete pass, and they went to fourth down. But still, it should have been a safety. That safety would have even provided more momentum for us. But there was a couple talks about that. I know Lamar put on Twitter or something, like a comment of like, if he were to have done that, it would have been a safety. And for sure, it would have been. We are very neglected, I feel like. I don't know why that is. I feel like everyone's out to get us a little bit because we are the most feared team, especially with Derrick Henry, which had a great game. But we'll go into more the stats and everything along those lines. But let's go over what happened in the game. Well, Lamar Jackson balled out again. He only threw the ball 15 times. We ran the ball a lot, but it was effective. So, of course, you're going to continue to run the ball. He was 12 of 15 for 182 yards and a touchdown throwing the ball, which, another good performance. I think our receiving corps did a lot better this time around. Bateman was able to show up a little more, so I was happy about that. The only concern we have is Mark Andrews had 1 target the entire game. Granted, Isaiah Likely only had 1 target, but he had 1 target, 1 catch for 4 yards. So A lot of people are concerned that Mark Andrews is just not there anymore. I think they're trying to work him back in and figure it out because we do have Derrick Henry. We are a very run dominant team, but we have to be able to get Likely and Andrews involved because Zay Flowers is also another guy that we worked on, which he had a clutch catch in the end. So rushing wise, Derrick Henry was a monster. 25 carries, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He played really well. And against a team that, they said that they couldn't afford him, which is a bunch of bullshit. You could have afforded him. You just didn't want to pay for him. And so we did, and we torched him. We torched you guys with him. Lamar Jackson, 14 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Justice Hill, 5 carries, 33 yards. So we were able to run the ball really well. We had 274 yards rushing. Now, we didn't have as many passing attempts. And yes, that's why it doesn't look like Mark Andrews did anything. A lot of the players didn't have the best stats. But it's because we were able to run the ball so effectively. It was like, why change anything? Granted, in the fourth quarter, we just didn't. It just seemed like we were coasting, didn't try. And that's like kind of what Lamar was saying. He goes, let me run up the score. Let me continue to go at it. And I love his aggression. I think that he liked that we got the win, but he was very pissed that it was that close because it should not have been that close. And, for the past 3 years, he's seen it where they give up leads in the end, in the fourth quarter. So that needs to be corrected. But other than that, we had a really good game offensively and defensively. It's just that fourth quarter that haunts the offense and the defense. So not really going to go over any receiving stats. We just had hits here and there. Bateman looked a lot better. I give him a lot of credit. I think that he's going to do really well going forward. Another huge shout out is to Nate Wiggins. Cowboys were driving and CeeDee Lamb caught a ball and Nate Wiggins was able to punch the ball out, which was awesome to see. He was on CeeDee Lamb, it's very tough for him to be on CeeDee Lamb because CeeDee Lamb is one of the best in the game. He gave up a couple big chunks to CeeDee Lamb, but he's a rookie. But for him to come out and be able to punch the ball and see that ball and get us in a good position, that's what really turned the tide in the second half, the second quarter as well. We had 3 sacks. Another good one. Kyle Van Noy had 2. And we had a team sack of 1, which, again, we're doing really good on defense in the first 3 quarters. It's that fourth quarter. We just can't get anything going. Cowboys had 0 sacks against us. So the offensive line played a lot better than it has the first 2 weeks, which I'm very happy to see. We're able to intertwine a lot of different players to play, but not having any sacks is beautiful to see from an offensive line that's continuing to learn and continuing to improve. Had a turnover-free game, played really well. They passed the ball really well, but that's not shocking. Cowboys are very good passing the ball. They ran for 51 yards. That was it. We're able to hold the run game down, which going into next week is something we're going to need to prevent. But they were able to pass for 379 yards, which we need to work on the passing game a little bit. We're still trying to figure out our systems on defense, but hey, a win's a win. We know what we need to correct. We know what we need to do going into next week because the games aren't going to get any easier. We have the Bills next week, which the Bills are 3-0. They're a great team. Good news is we're playing at home on Sunday night. So we're able to kind of have a little bit more momentum, a little bit more help, I guess, from our home team crowd. But we'll see. The Bills are playing really well right now, so it's going to be a close game. The big concern is we had 13 penalties for 105 yards. A lot of our penalties came in the fourth quarter on offense and defense. So that really goes to show you that either we're very terrible in the fourth quarter that we're just giving up dumb penalties, or we are very easy to pin stuff on penalty wise, because this is the second game where we've had double digit penalties that have been costly. Cost us against the Raiders, which there were a couple calls where there shouldn't have been. There was one this game with a PI. I mean, not with a PI, sorry, with a roughing the passer call, which I didn't understand. No one landed on Dak. But again, we just seem to be very targeted, whereas the Chiefs aren't targeted at all. And it sucks for the rest of the league. I know it's just my team that feels targeted, but for the rest of the league, when you play the Chiefs, you're at a disadvantage. We were able to hold up against the Chiefs. We were able to hold up against Cowboys here going into next week. Got to have an even better performance than we did this week, but it was nice to get the win. Definitely something we needed. And another interesting news, we were able to sign Ngakoue, which we had him a couple years ago, and he played really well for us. So it's nice to get another pass rusher in there to hopefully help our team, get to the pass rusher, because right now Josh Allen is a problem. The Buffalo Bills' offense is a problem. Their defense is playing really well too. So we're going to have to go into playing really well, because it's going to be tough going forward. We're second in our AFC North. Obviously, Pittsburgh's 3-0. Not too concerned. But definitely need to work at getting those wins where we can. Now, on to week 4 predictions. So it's going to be a fun week. As you know, for the Ravens, we are the Sunday night game playing at home against the Bills, which the Bills are 3-0. Bills are going to be a tough matchup. If we can get this win, this will be a huge win for us and going into momentum into week 5. But I don't know. Spread has us at 2.5, but I don't know. I'm a little wary of the Bills right now. Bills look a lot better than they did last year right now. But let's start off the week 4 predictions. All right, so we got the Cowboys and the Giants on Thursday night. Obviously, I think the Cowboys are going to bounce back and just put up over 30 points against the Giants. I know the Giants defense plays well, but Cowboys are still a great offensive team. So I think that they're going to do well. Saints in Atlanta, at Atlanta. This is going to be one of those close games. It doesn't look like it off of records, but Atlanta has played really well. They're starting to click a little more offensively. Defense is starting to look a lot better. Saints just had a heartbreaking loss to the Eagles. To where do they bounce back or do they regress? So another good one. Rams and the Bears at the Bears. I would choose the Rams if I had to pick, because the spread says that the Bears are going to win by 3. I would put it on the Rams, because the Rams just had to face a 49er team that was, very tough to beat, and they were able to beat them. And the Bears have not looked good offensively from a quarterback standpoint. So I would not put my eggs in the Bears baskets right now. Got the Vikings and the Packers. I would stay hot with the Vikings. It depends on if Jordan Love plays. If Jordan Love plays, then okay, this game could be more favored to Green Bay. But if he doesn't play, I would continue to go with the Vikings. Steelers at the Colts, of course. I thought that, I said it last week. I thought the Steelers had the hardest strength of schedule. But yet they're playing the Colts. Like, the Colts have been probably their toughest team so far that they're going to face. The Chargers, yes, they were up until the point where Herbert got injured. Then the whole game's busted. But, Pittsburgh's favored by 2. I'm hoping the Colts win, but I feel like the Steelers are going to go 4-0 and still be that pretender team that they're not really that good. They're just playing weak teams. Broncos at the Jets. I think the Jets are going to win, but I'm hoping this game is close just for Bo Nix, progression. This is going to be another tough matchup. This is another top 5 defense for the Jets. We'll see how Aaron Rodgers handles the Broncos defense, because the Broncos defense has been playing well in every game. So this will be a good one. Probably the game of the morning games, probably the game of the week for the morning games, is the Eagles at Tampa Bay. Now, Tampa Bay beat the Eagles in the playoffs last year. And so the Eagles are favored in this game, but I don't know. Baker Mayfield, yeah, he didn't play that well, but he beat Detroit. And I'd have to say that the Eagles, they just still don't look good at all. It depends. I mean, if A.J. Brown plays against the Bucs, I would choose the Eagles. But if he doesn't play, I think that the Bucs may squeak this one out. Morning game, Bengals, Carolina. I'm going to go Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to win by a lot. Maybe this is another shocking upset where Andy Dalton plays out of his mind. If that happens, I'm going to be super happy, but I think the Bengals will bounce back and go 1-3. Jaguars at the Texans. I think the Texans are just going to kill the Jaguars. Jaguars don't look like a good team anymore, offensively or defensively. They just look terrible. On to the afternoon games. We have the Commanders at the Cardinals. This will be a good game. I know that the records don't show that, but the Cardinals have been playing amazing. Commanders just had a huge win against the Bengals, but the Cardinals have a very good defense that is very tricky to go against. So this will be one of those close games. Patriots at 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to bounce back and beat them. Browns at Raiders is probably going to be a slow defensive fest. I don't know who's going to win this game. I'm hoping the Raiders do, but I don't know. It's at the Raiders. I don't know. It's a very tough game to see. Chiefs at Chargers. Obviously, the Chiefs are going to win. Chiefs are just a better team. Chargers, if Herbert doesn't play, then it's going to be the Chiefs by like 12 or 14, I'd say. Bills at Ravens. Obviously, I'm going to vote the Ravens, but that's going to be a very interesting game. Then we have 2 Monday night games, which is the Titans at the Dolphins. Now, this is going to be a fun game because Tua is not going to play. Does Tyler Huntley, a former backup QB for the Ravens who made the Pro Bowl, does he play for the Dolphins? If he plays, I think that the Dolphins can win this game. If he doesn't, and I don't even know, the Titans will win if Tyler Huntley doesn't play. Seahawks at the Lions. Now, this is another great game. I'm not going to not go against the Lions. I think the Lions are going to do really well, but don't disrespect on the Seahawks. Their defense is vital, and Geno Smith is still playing really good. So this is going to be a toss-up game for me. So I'm very excited to see what goes on from there. As the clock winds down on another riveting episode, I want to thank you guys all for listening. Scheduling wise, again, I'm going to post these every Wednesday going forward. Kind of keep the same format so that you guys can get a good riff of what's going to be coming up. If you have anything that you want me to talk about my podcast, you can leave a comment on my Instagram page, my Spotify, my Apple Podcast, or YouTube. Comment and like. Be sure to subscribe as well. But just make sure that, if you want me to talk about a specific team or go in depth about something, I have no problem doing that and changing up my format a little bit to cater to my audience's comments and what they want to talk about. Also, all the music and sound is provided by my brother-in-law, Justin. So, Justin, thank you for that. Well, Ravens Nation, thanks for joining me again on another great episode. Until next time, stay fierce, stay loyal, and keep rooting for that purple and black. I will see you next time on The Ravens Call.